Tom starts off the game by playing a forest, then passes. Extra follows in his footsteps and plays a forest of his own, then passes. Sam then plays an undergrowth stadium and paints a target on his back by playing a turn 1 Soul Ring. Happy with that, he passes his turn. John plays a Hallowed Fountain, paying 2, and passes. Tom goes to his second turn, plays a Woodland Cemetery for turn, and casts a Golgari Signet. He then passes the turn to Extra. Extra plays a forest as his land for turn, and casts Sakura Tribe Elder, ending his turn. Sam starts his turn by casting Cultivate, fetching a forest into play and a swamp into his hand. He then plays Vault of Champions for his land for turn, and passes, with John cycling a cast out on end of turn to draw a card. John plays a Lava Glide Pathway and ends his turn. Tom then takes his turn and plays Clearwater Pathway. He casts Zedruu Wayfinder, failing to find the land. At the end of his turn, Extra activates Sakura Tribe Elder, fetching an island into play. Extra starts by playing Yavimaya Coast as his land for turn, then casts Vizier of the Menagerie, passing his turn to Sam. Sam goes to his turn and plays a swamp as his land for turn. He then casts Haywire Might, followed by casting Thalia and the Gitrog monster. He then plays another swamp and passes. John takes his turn and plays a tapped Storm-Carved Coast for his land for turn. At the end of his turn, Tom casts Tainted Indulgence, drawing 2 and discarding Prime Speaker Zingana. Tom starts his turn by playing a forest. He then casts his commander, the Mimeoplasm, who enters as a copy of Zingana with 9+1/+1 counters due to exiling Void Beckoner and Zingana. His Mimeo Zingana Plasm then triggers and he draws 10 cards. He then passes his turn, discarding the hand size. Extra simply plays a forest as his land for turn, and on his end step, Sam casts Grizzly Salvage, putting Llanowar Wastes into his hand. Sam then goes to his turn and decides to dredge 5 on his draw step due to Stinkweed Imp. He then plays Llanowar Wastes and casts said Stinkweed Imp. Sam then attacks Tom with Thalia and Gitrog, triggering its effect, sacrificing the Imp and dredging 5 on the draw trigger. He then casts his commander, Karador, Ghost Chieftain, and follows up by casting Fiend Artisan from his graveyard, paying 1 life in the process. He then passes his turn to John. John plays a tapped Reliquary Tower, then plays a Planar Disruption on Mimeo Zingana Plasm, and passes the turn. Tom starts off his turn by playing a Soul Ring, followed by a cast of Zedruu the Greathearted, which he activates in order to draw and discard a card. He then plays a Hinterland Harbor tapped as his land for turn, and passes his turn. Extra takes his turn and plays a Crag Crown Pathway, forgetting it should enter tapped. Then he plays his commander, Animar, Soul of Elements. He casts Llanowar Elves, triggering Animar, giving it a +1/+1 counter. At the end of his turn, Tom casts Bitter Triumph, paying 3 and destroying Karador. Sam then takes his turn and activates Fiend Artisan, sacrificing Might and paying the X cost for 5, triggering the Haywire Might as it dies, gaining Sam 2 life. He resolves the Artisan ability, putting Revelark into play. At the start of combat, Tom casts Pongify on Thalia and Gitrog, and with his plans ruined, Sam passes the turn to John. On his turn, John finally casts his commander, Zedruu the Greathearted, and passes. Tom takes his turn and plays Llanowar Waste for his land for turn, then casts Sidisi, Brood Tyrant. Upon entering the battlefield, Sidisi triggers, milling 3 cards, and due to milling a creature, also makes a 2/2 black zombie. Tom then passes his turn to Extra. Extra starts with a cast of Up the Beanstalk, drawing for its ETB effect. He then proceeds by casting Hardened Scales, followed by Hormagaunt Horde for X = 1, triggering Animar, giving him 2+1/+1 counters. He then casts Wood Elves from the top of his deck, paying 1 life in the process. Animar triggers again and gains 2 counters, while Extra fetches up a Stomping Ground, putting it into play untapped, paying 2 life. He then casts Mavlock for X is 5, triggering Animar for 2 counters, and up the Beanstalk for a draw. On ETB, Mavlock's Ravenous triggers and Extra draws. Extra then targets Revelark for the fight trigger for Mavlock, and in response, Sam casts Infernal Grasp on Mavlock. After that, Extra casts the Ozlith and goes to combat, swinging with Animar at John, and passes the turn. Sam starts his turn off by activating Fiend Artisan, sacrificing Revelark and paying for X equals 5. Revelark triggers, returning Reclamation Sage and Fauna Shaman from his graveyard, and destroys the Ozlith with the Reclamation Sage trigger. He then resolves the Fiend Artisan ability, putting Karmic Guide onto the battlefield, triggering Karmic Guide's ETB and returning Revelark to the battlefield. Sam then ends his turn and passes to John. John plays an island for his land for turn, and casts a Crow and Horse, handing over the reins to Extra. At the end of John's turn, Tom activates Matsalanto, transforming it into the core. Tom then takes his turn and goes to combat, swinging with Sidisi at John, triggering Sidisi, milling 3, and making a 2/2 black zombie. John takes 3 damage, and Tom then passes to Extra. On Extra's upkeep, a Crow and Horse triggers, and each of Extra's opponents makes a 1/1 soldier. Extra then casts Primordial Sage, putting 2+1/+1 counters on Animar, also triggering Beanstalk for a draw. He continues with casting Farhaven Elf, triggering Animar for counters, and Primordial Sage for a draw. In response to the Elf's ETB trigger, Sam casts Assassin's Trophy on Primordial Sage. It resolves, and Extra fetches up a forest from the trophy, then fetches up another forest from the Farhaven Elf's ETB trigger. Extra then casts Garruk's Uprising and draws on its ETB ability. He then casts Aberrant from the top of his deck for X equals 10, triggering Animar and up the Beanstalk for a draw. When Aberrant enters, Extra also draws from the Ravenous trigger and Uprising trigger. He then casts Spore Cyst for X equals 6 from the top of his deck, paying 1 life in the process, triggering Animar and Beanstalk, while also triggering Spore Cyst on ETB for a draw, fetching 4 tapped forests, and drawing from Uprising. He then casts Bloom Tender, triggering Animar, plays Riverglide Pathway, and goes to combat. He decides to kill John with his Animar, and then passes the turn to Sam. On Sam's upkeep, Karmic Guide's Echo triggers, and Sam decides to not pay and sacrifice it. Then on his turn, he activates Fauna Shaman, discarding Stinkweed Imp, and putting Viscera Seer into his hand. He then activates Fiend Artisan, sacrificing a soldier and paying the X cost of 2 to search up Safi Eriksdottir and put it into play. He then casts Viscera Seer and proceeds to activate Safi, sacrificing it to target Revelark. In response, Tom casts Beast Within, targeting Viscera Seer. And in response to that, Sam sacrifices Revelark for the Viscera Seer, triggering Revelark to target Safi and Karmic Guide in his graveyard. This time, Extra responds by casting Rapid Hybridization, also targeting Viscera Seer. It resolves, Viscera Seer dies, and Sam makes a 3/3. The Revelark trigger resolves, returning Safi and Karmic Guide. Karmic Guide triggers, returning Viscera Seer, and Beast Within fizzles. Sam then proceeds to activate Safi, targeting Karmic Guide, followed by Viscera Seer sacrificing Karmic Guide, triggering Safi to return the Karmic Guide, which triggers Karmic to return Revelark. He then activates Seer, sacrificing Karmic, followed by Revelark, triggering its effect to return Safi and Karmic, which again returns Revelark. He then activates Seer again, sacrificing Karmic and Revelark, finally returning a Damage Outlet and Ellis Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim along with Karmic Guide, repeating the loop and winning the game.